Imagine for a moment that your deepest beliefs, those ideas that shape your identity and guide your actions, are not truly your own. Instead, they are dictated by law, enforced by those in power, and monitored by your neighbors. Every thought, every prayer, every doubt is subject to scrutiny and control. For centuries, across continents and cultures, governments and rulers told people exactly what to believe and how to worship. Faith was not a personal journey, but a public requirement, enforced from the pulpit and the courthouse alike. Disagreeing with the official faith wasn't just a private matter, it was a dangerous act of defiance. It could mean heavy fines, years in prison, or even harsher punishments. Families were torn apart, communities divided, and lives forever changed by the simple act of believing differently. Fast forward to today, January 16, 2026. Most of us take for granted the freedom to believe, or not believe, without fear of punishment or persecution. We move through our days rarely thinking about the battles fought to secure this right. This liberty shapes our daily lives in countless ways. Churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, and other sacred spaces stand open to all, welcoming those who seek meaning, comfort, or community. And just as importantly, we have the freedom to abstain, to walk past, to question, to choose our own path, or to choose none at all. This freedom is as vital as the air we breathe. It's a fundamental right, hard-won through generations of struggle, protest, and sacrifice. The road to religious liberty was paved with courage and conviction. This is the story of how that freedom was born, a radical idea in a new nation, where the right to believe or not was fiercely debated and ultimately enshrined in law. The principle was simple yet revolutionary. The mind is free, and the state cannot control it. This idea emerged from centuries of persecution and the longing for a better way. It was debated by founders who knew firsthand the cost of forced belief. They argued, struggled, and ultimately agreed that true faith cannot be compelled. Their struggle gave us a precious gift, the right to follow our conscience, to seek truth in our own way, and to respect the choices of others. This is the story of how a nation decided that faith is a private matter, not a public mandate. That decision changed everything, shaping the character of a people and the destiny of a country. And it's a story worth remembering, because the weight of belief and the freedom to carry it or set it down is a legacy we must never take for granted. Before America, church and state were inseparable in Europe and the colonies. Monarchs ruled both government and religion. Loyalty meant following the official faith. Taxes funded churches, attendance was mandatory, and dissent was dangerous. Rulers used religion to control, and questioning the church meant challenging the state. Centuries of conflict and persecution followed, people punished for worshiping differently. The Anabaptists, Huguenots, and Puritans all suffered, fleeing to the New World for freedom. Yet, many established their own intolerant regimes, like the Puritans in Massachusetts. Dissenters were banished, whipped, or worse. Faith was a public duty, not a private choice. The founders saw these injustices firsthand. They understood that when the state compels belief, it controls the mind. This realization sparked a revolution in thought, and it set the stage for a new kind of freedom. As the American colonies expanded, so did the tapestry of religious life. Presbyterians, Lutherans, Quakers, Catholics, and Jews, each group brought their own beliefs, customs, and hopes for freedom. This diversity was striking in a world where, for centuries, a single church often dominated public life. In towns and villages, new congregations sprang up, their members gathering in humble meeting houses or grand churches, each seeking a place to worship in their own way. Yet, in places like Virginia, the law required everyone, even those of different faiths, to pay taxes supporting the established church, usually the Anglican Church. For many, this was a bitter injustice. Imagine being forced to fund a church you never attended, your money supporting beliefs you might not share. This policy bred resentment and a growing sense of alienation among dissenters. The question soon echoed through meeting houses and legislative halls. Should government have any power over religion? Was it right for the state to dictate matters of faith? Some colonists argued that an official church was necessary to maintain order and unity. But others, especially those who had suffered for their beliefs, insisted that true faith could only flourish when people were free to follow their conscience, without government interference or coercion. Influential thinkers like James Madison and Thomas Jefferson inspired by Enlightenment ideals of reason and liberty, saw the union of church and state as a source of corruption and oppression. They believed that mixing government and religion threatened both, undermining the integrity of faith and the fairness of law. For them, true faith was a matter of the heart and soul, needing no government support or approval. They argued that religion should be a personal choice, not a civic duty enforced by law. Ordinary people led the fight for religious liberty. In Virginia, Baptists and other dissenters gathered in secret, worshiping outdoors or in private homes, risking arrest for practicing their faith without a government license. Many were jailed, beaten, or publicly humiliated, but they refused to be silenced. Their courage inspired others, turning private suffering into a public cause. These dissenters wrote petitions, gathered signatures, and brought their grievances before colonial legislatures. Their stories put a human face on the struggle for freedom, making it impossible for lawmakers to ignore their pleas. Their determination and their alliance with leaders like Madison forged a powerful movement. Together, ordinary citizens and visionary statesmen challenged the old order and demanded change. The seeds of dissent, planted in hardship and watered by hope, grew into a movement for religious liberty that would transform the nation. The struggle for freedom of conscience changed America forever, laying the foundation for a nation where people of all faiths, or none, could worship freely. The nation would never be the same. In 1776, as America declared its independence from British rule, the nation was not only fighting for political freedom, but also for the freedom of thought and belief. The Founding Fathers gathered in Philadelphia, determined to create a new kind of society, one where liberty would be protected not just by words, but by laws and principles that would endure for generations. Among these visionaries, Thomas Jefferson stood out. He recognized that true liberty required more than just freedom from a king. It demanded freedom from any form of tyranny, including the tyranny over the mind. Jefferson believed that the right to think, believe, and worship freely was essential to human dignity and progress. To protect this freedom, Jefferson authored the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. This groundbreaking document boldly declared that no person could be forced to support, attend, or participate in any church or religious practice against their will. It was a radical idea for its time, challenging centuries of tradition. The statute argued that truth is powerful enough to stand on its own, without the need for government enforcement. Forcing people to believe, Jefferson Trumbuchter, only leads to hypocrisy and resentment, not genuine faith or unity. Jefferson considered this statute one of his greatest achievements, so important, in fact, that he asked for it to be inscribed on his tombstone, alongside his authorship of the Declaration of Independence. But passing the statute was far from easy. Many powerful leaders and church officials wanted to maintain the old system, where taxes supported Christian churches and religious conformity was expected. The debate in the Virginia legislature was fierce and emotional. Jefferson's close ally, James Madison, took up the fight. He warned that any government support for religion, no matter how well-intentioned, risked giving the state dangerous control over people's beliefs and consciences. Madison's powerful essay, The Memorial and Remonstrance, was distributed throughout Virginia. It rallied public opinion, persuading citizens that religious liberty was a fundamental right that must be protected from government interference. Madison argued that religion is a duty owed only to God, not to any government or ruler. Each person must be free to follow their own conscience without fear of punishment or coercion. Support poured in from dissenting groups, especially Baptists and other minorities, who sent petitions demanding an end to religious taxes in state-sponsored churches. Their voices helped turn the tide of the debate. Finally, after years of struggle, the tax bill was defeated. The victory was celebrated as a triumph for liberty and justice. In 1786, Jefferson's statute became law, officially severing the ties between church and state in Virginia. It was a bold step toward a new vision of freedom. This landmark law set a powerful precedent for the entire nation, inspiring the First Amendment and shaping America's commitment to religious liberty for all. Virginia's victory was just the beginning. In 1787, as the Constitution was drafted, religion's place in government was hotly debated. The original Constitution was secular, but many wanted stronger protections. James Madison led the effort, crafting the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The Establishment Clause barred a national church, The Free Exercise Clause protected personal faith. Together, they created a balance. Government could neither help nor hinder religion. The First Amendment was a promise. Your conscience is your own, and it would shape the nation's future. The First Amendment, ratified in 1791, was a milestone, but change was slow. It only applied to the federal government. States kept established churches for decades. In Massachusetts, the Congregational Church was tax-supported until 1833. Minority groups still faced prejudice: Catholics, Jews, and, especially enslaved African Americans. For many, religious freedom was a distant promise, yet the First Amendment became a tool for demanding rights. Isaac Turo's letter to President Washington led to a powerful affirmation. To bigotry, no sanction; to persecution, no assistance. Over time, Supreme Court cases extended these freedoms to every state. It took generations of struggle, but the light of liberty grew brighter. The dawn was slow, but steady, and the promise of religious freedom became real for all. Religious freedom transformed America into a marketplace of ideas. Faiths competed for followers, not by law, but by persuasion. Diversity flourished: new denominations, immigrant traditions, and the right to have no faith at all. This fostered individualism and innovation. The American model inspired the world, shaping international human rights. But freedom isn't just a law, it's a culture of respect and empathy. The founders gave us the blueprint, but each generation must defend it. The work of building a free society is never finished. Today, January 16, 2026, we live the founders' vision, a nation where belief is a personal choice. This freedom is a precious inheritance, paid for by those who dared to think differently. The story of religious freedom is ongoing, filled with challenges and contradictions. The wall of separation is still tested, the rights of minorities still debated. The founders gave us principles, not final answers. Freedom is a garden, not a monument. It requires vigilance and courage. It's about more than religion. It's about the freedom of the mind. The right to be different, to follow your conscience, is the foundation of all liberty. Liberty is not a given. It's a choice we must reaffirm every day. And that choice is ours to make, together.